When it comes to building muscle, the first thing you imagine is biceps, chest or shoulders. But fingers? You have probably never even thought about that. Because fingers don't really have any real muscles that you could build, as most of the big muscles that control the fingers are in your forearms and hands. And the muscles that are actually in your fingers are very small and basically impossible to build. So why did I even make this video when I just told you that you can't really build the muscles in your fingers? Well, yes, that is true, I didn't lie to you. But the fact that you can't really grow your fingers in the same way you would build your biceps doesn't mean that it's impossible. Otherwise I wouldn't be making this video. The way you go about actually increasing the size of your fingers might sound a little weird, and you will probably think that I'm insane. But what you need to do to build bigger fingers is to basically just mess up your fingers over and over. Well, so what do I mean by mess up your fingers? No, it doesn't have to do anything with putting your fingers in between the car doors when it's closing, or anything like that. The term mess up your fingers is my way of simplifying the term mechanical adaptation, which is how you can actually increase the size of your fingers. Because each time you mess up your fingers, you cause micro damage to your tendons, ligaments, skin and muscles. And your body then has to repair that micro damage, which will then over time result in you having bigger fingers. This is very comparable to when you get blisters on your hands. They also get bigger and bigger the more stress you put on them. Yes, the process of growing your fingers like that is very slow, but it's the only way that actually works. This is kind of why you see a lot of older people with massive fingers, because they have been probably doing manual labor their whole life and have fingers that are similar to Shrek. Because their fingers have undergone mechanical adaptation for an insane amount of time. In other words, they have been messing up their fingers their whole life. But luckily, you don't have to spend your entire life doing intense manual labor to get bigger fingers, as there are exercises that can help you with that. There are 3 main methods that I would recommend, as they are the most effective for building bigger fingers in my experience. The first one of them is rice bucket training. If you have been watching this channel for a while, you know very well that I was gonna mention this technique. But if you are new here and you are not sure what rice bucket training is, let me explain. As the name implies, rice bucket training is all about filling a big bucket with rice and then using that to train your hands and fingers. You do this by doing various squeezing, pinching and twisting movements. And even though it might seem like it's super easy at the first glance, it is definitely not. The first couple of times you try it, you will experience the most insane pump ever. The rice bucket training is not only good for building your fingers, but it's perfect for building bigger hands and forearms. That's why I would highly recommend you try it out. What I would also highly recommend is checking out my training plans. If you feel lost in your bodybuilding journey and you need something that you can just follow and get results, then you should definitely get one of my training plans. Everything is as simplified as I could have made it, so you will not be feeling lost or overwhelmed anymore. You will start taking advantage of the basics that will take you to greatness. If that sounds good, click the first link in the description. Each time I mention rice bucket training, people always ask me if it isn't just food wasting. But you have to realize that filling up that bucket with rice will last you a super long time. I very recently had to replace the rice in my bucket, and guess how long it lasted? It was roughly 3 years before it started smelling really funny. So I really wouldn't say that this is a food waste, as you will give the rice more usefulness in its life than it could ever serve by it being eaten. If anything, after saying this, it really feels more like that actually eating rice is a food waste. The key to making the rice last you a super long time is proper storage. First of all, you need a bucket with a lid, or simply something that you can use to cover your bucket while you are not using it. Then the other thing, you have to store it somewhere where it's not humid. Because once it gets wet in that bucket, it's going to get really ugly in there. Which also implies that you should not do rice bucket training when your hands are wet or just super sweaty. Otherwise, you will spawn some new friends in that bucket, if you know what I'm saying. The reason why rice bucket training works for building your fingers is because it's continuously messing up your fingers. Because you are putting your fingers through mechanical resistance and adaptation, where each time you do the rice bucket training, your hands get messed up a little bit, and your body will then have to repair that, which will then over time result not only in bigger fingers, but bigger hands overall. Which brings us to the second method of building bigger fingers, which is hanging. But this goes much deeper than just regular hanging. You know, doing dead hangs and such is a good way of building your fingers. But this is a completely rookie level compared to what you can actually do once you get more advanced. If you have ever tried doing dead hangs, you probably felt like your fingers are gonna explode once you started to approach the max hanging time. But if you persevered and didn't quit after the first day, you slowly adapted. And after a couple of weeks, your fingers didn't hurt so much anymore. Which means what, my dear viewer? Yes, you have undergone mechanical adaptation. So hanging is a good way of building your fingers, at least in the early stages, before your fingers toughen up. Doing dead hangs after that point is still good for all the other benefits, but if you are solely focused on getting massive fingers, you need to level up once again. The way you level up is by realizing how big of a role surface can play in building your fingers. Imagine that instead of hanging on a smooth bar in the gym, you find a branch in the forest. You just look at how rugged the bark is and you already know that this dead hang is going to be spicy. Because the surface of the branch is super rugged, you can once again inflict more micro stress on your fingers, which, as we have learned before, causes mechanical adaptation, which will grow your fingers. But if you would rather not go into the forest to find a sturdy branch, because yeah, that is kind of sus, then you can use another method. You can simply wrap a towel around the bar and hold that, which will be much more challenging than just hanging on a smooth bar, because you will really need to squeeze the towel hard, which will give your fingers a great workout. And the last method that works really well for growing your fingers is pinching. But not like that, like this. The reason why pinching is so good is because it trains something completely different. Hanging is training your crushing grip, but pinching does not. That is because when you are pinching, your thumb and fingers work directly against each other, which trains your pinch grip, and that can be very valuable. Because the pinch grip is going to kind of isolate your fingers, as the load will be put purely on your fingers, instead of your entire hand as a whole when you are training the crushing grip, on an exercise like hanging, for example. There is a lot of options that you can choose from if you want to start training the pinch grip. The simplest and the most accessible one is for sure using weight plates. But if you have access to fancier options, you could definitely try something like pinch blocks, which are also great. So these are the 3 main methods that I would recommend for growing your fingers. There is a ton of other methods for building your fingers, but I feel like these ones work the best based on my experience with them. And if you happen to work a manual labor job and you combine it with some of these exercises, you will for sure develop massive fingers over time. But that is not all, because I have 2 honorable mentions for you. The first one is grippers, which can also be a very good option, but it puts more focus on the bigger muscles in your forearms and hands. Fingers also get a good workout by doing this, but if your focus is primarily on building bigger fingers, I would recommend the rice bucket training over grippers, because that will stimulate your fingers from all the possible angles, as you are doing a lot of different movements rather than just the same one over and over. The other honorable mention is rock climbing. When it comes to increasing the size and strength of your fingers, it is definitely a very good idea to take inspiration from rock climbers, because the finger strength required for some of those holds is absolutely insane. If you look at Alex Honnold, for example, who is probably the most insane climber, as he has been doing free climbs without any safety measures, like, look at this, what is that? You really gotta trust your fingers to do something like this without any safety measures. But when you look at his hands, you quickly understand that his safety measure is his fingers. Just look at how thick they are, it's incredible. His fingers look like that because he has been climbing for so many years, so his hands have undergone so much mechanical adaptation, it's absolutely crazy. I think that in this case, saying that he quite literally messed up his fingers is very accurate. So if you are trying to get the biggest fingers you can, rock climbing might definitely be something that you could try. But unlike Alex, you should most definitely use some safety measures. You made it all the way here, which means that you want to watch another one. So here it is.